Good. Get some sun, buddy. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey? Here. Mr. Bateman?
Here.
Mr. Blair?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Mr. Ori?
Here.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Here.
Mr. Ping?
Here.
Welcome, everyone. We have a full house tonight. That's wonderful. With us tonight, we have our Assistant City Manager, Corey Wright, Clerk of Council, Misty Brent, City Manager, Dave Kennedy, City Solicitor, Joe Braun, our Public Works Director, Scott Wisby. I think that's twice in like a month or something. I don't even know what to
Maybe a month and a half.
I don't know what to say about that. Sue Madsen, our Safety Director. Lieutenant Spock is here as our Sergeant at Arms. Also, we have former council members Todd Osborne and Pat May. So welcome, everyone. Glad to have you here. Before we get to, we have a lot of good things to do tonight, but we do have a couple sad things to talk about. We did lose another hero this past weekend, Matthew Yates, who was a 15-year deputy with the Clark County, Ohio Sheriff's Office, was killed in the line of duty. Our hearts certainly go out to Deputy Yates' family, both blood and blue. It's just another, unfortunately, sad reminder of the dangers that our officers face every day when they're out there working for us. So please keep them in your prayers for their continued safety. We also lost Coach Darnell Parker, who was the Loveland High School girls women's head basketball coach. He passed away this past Sunday, also after a couple-year, fairly long battle with cancer. So if we could just honor a moment of silence for those individuals. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. First on the agenda is the Amazing Race proclamation. Do we have so what? We'll bring everybody up. Doug, whoever you've got here with you. All right. So I will name all the individuals that are. This is your committee, even though you're not all here. We have some. But obviously Doug Portman, Tom Grome, Dustin Bray, Terry Puckett, Marjorie Blair, Tanya Stacy, Jenny Lytle, Scott Thompson, Brian Gary, and Brian Ripperger are the committee. So we are here because this was our last year for the Amazing. So we have a proclamation. Whereas 2022 marked the 16th and final year of the Amazing Charity Race, and whereas the Amazing Charity Race, modeled after the hit television show The Amazing Race, has brought together people locally and from across the country, from Rhode Island to California, to raise funds for local charities while highlighting the community. And whereas for the past 16 years, teams have laughed and pushed their way through 320 unique physical and mental challenges. And whereas the Amazing Charity Race also brought together hundreds of volunteers from local businesses, churches, nonprofits, residents, scout troops, and sports teams, strengthening and unifying the community. And whereas in the past 16 years, the Amazing Charity Race has raised over $800,000 for over 100 local charities. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Bailey, by the power vested in me as Mayor of the City of Loveland, and on behalf of City Council and residents, do hereby extend our sincere appreciation and thanks to Doug Portman and the Amazing Charity Race Committee for supporting local charities and for having a positive impact on the City of Loveland. Furthermore, I hereby proclaim July 26, 2022 as Amazing Charity Race Day in the City of Loveland. So, thank you. It's all in the proclamation. I'll give you a chance to speak here, Doug. But Doug and I have been friends for a few years. An amazing man who had an idea, had a dream, if you will, and turned it into something that has been truly amazing for this city and really the envy of lots of communities around us that we had such a wonderful event, an event that gave so much back to the community and to various charities throughout this community. I mean, $800,000 is pretty amazing. So we're lucky to have Doug as part of this community. We were lucky to have it for all these years, and we'll miss you and miss it. You're not going anywhere. All right, go ahead.
I would just like to thank all the council, the police and the fire and the public works and of course the mayor that have let us put this on through the years and be part of the community. It certainly has helped a lot of the people in the community, and I know they all thank you too, because those small volunteer groups that don't get a lot of money from outside sources, this really helped them through the years. We tried to really focus on the small groups, the people that really need the money but they can't get large donations. So this has been a true partnership with the city, and we certainly thank you for all you've done for us. And of course, I thank all our committee members that obviously we couldn't have done it without a collaborative effort on that. And we just thank you for this proclamation, because it's very special to know that your work and what we did for the community was recognized. Mr. Blair, thank you for all your help through the years. We certainly know that you've been a big cheerleader for us and helping us out and being there for us, and we thank you for that too.
For 16 years.
16 years.
The Saturday before Father's Day was the best day of the year.
It was. It is, yeah. We're going to certainly miss being part of the community as far as the race, but we have some ideas. Maybe we can partner up in a different way to raise money for these small groups still. So thank you all again. Mr. Kennedy, thank you for your help, and everybody that was involved. And if you've showed up and just watched, or you showed up and lent a hand, we just certainly appreciate everything that you've done for us. So thank you all very much.
Pictures.
Okay, perfect. Can I take this with me?
Why are they all being shy? We're doing a picture.
Oh.
John and I are.
Come on.
You're welcome.
It's not over. All right, Tori, and whoever you can bring everybody over here. Whoever you want. If you want everybody, do you want everybody back here?
I don't care. I just
You can do whatever they want.
whoever they want.
They're welcome to be back here. One wall versus the other.
Right. We just moved. Well,
That's all right. Okay. All right, we have another proclamation. Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas approximately 1/2 of chronic mental illness begins by the age of 14 and 3/4 by the age of 24. Whereas suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States and the second leading cause among young adults, and 90% of people who die by suicide have an underlying mental illness, and early identification and treatment can make a difference in successful management of mental illness and recovery. And whereas stigma and fear of discrimination keep many who would benefit from mental health services from seeking help, and research shows that the most effective way to reduce stigma is through personal contact with someone with a mental illness. And whereas everyone experiences times of difficulty and stress in their lives, and there is a strong body of research that supports specific tools that everyone can use to better handle challenges and protect their health and well-being. And whereas good mental health is critical to the well-being of our families, communities, schools, and businesses, and greater public awareness about mental illness can change negative attitudes and behaviors toward people with mental illness. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Bailey, by the power vested in me as mayor and on behalf of the City Council and the City of Loveland, do hereby proclaim the month of August 2022 as Mental Health Month in the City of Loveland to shine a light on mental illness and fight stigma, provide support, educate the public, and advocate for equal care. Furthermore, I call upon citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental illnesses, reducing stigma and discrimination, and promoting appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental illnesses. So I would invite Tori Morrison, if you would please, this is for you. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. I don't know if maybe some of you know my story, some of you don't. My son committed suicide in 2021. He was a 2020 graduate of Loveland High School. He was a 3-year varsity football player and lacrosse player. We were blindsided. We had no idea that this was coming. No history of mental illness, no depression, no anything. And we kind of made the decision, I don't know that my husband so much made it, but I made it at the hospital, that we were not going to be quiet about this. We can't help anybody if we don't share our story. And so it has become my passion. The very first year, within 2 months, we gave out 3 scholarships at Loveland High School. This past year, we gave out 9. So we're just increasing our efforts. We have partnered with the 988 initiative, which was started by this young man, Jake, right here, a senior. Well, he just graduated from Sycamore. We've also partnered with My Faith 5, which is a wonderful app. It's a great tool for anyone to use. It identifies their 5 people that are their go-to. And then we've also partnered with the Hope Squad, which we're very happy about. And we've done a few projects with them, and we'll continue to do things with them. We just need to get the word out there. We need kids to take priority with their mental health just like they do with their physical health. And I don't think that's happening in today's world. In the year 2020, I know Mayor Bailey already shared some statistics. In the year 2020, there were twice as many suicides as there were gun deaths. Let that sink in, because all we hear about are the gun deaths. But there were twice as many suicides. And that should scare all of us and make us do something about it. So that is our goal. We're hoping that for the month of August, that all of the businesses in town, homeowners, whoever, can display signs. It has all of the partners on it, including the City of Loveland. They're available on RP Diamond's website. The proceeds do go to benefit the scholarship fund or the Hope Squad or wherever we put some of that money. We're just hoping to get the word out that you can now dial 988 instead of the 10-digit 1-800 number. So I think a lot of people still don't know that. And then for the first time ever, August 26th, we have a joint game with Anderson Football, and it is a mental health awareness game. And to my knowledge, that has never been done. At least I know it's never been done at Loveland. Anderson, unfortunately, lost a senior in December of 2021. I know his parents are here. It's still much more fresh for them. But so we are enveloping them just as much as Loveland has enveloped my family, and they will be participating with the game. And that's it. I thank you guys so much. This community is like no other in your support of my family and in support of the cause that I've taken on. I just can't thank you enough.
Corey, what's the website again?
rpdiamond.com. You know, it's the spirit wear website where all your tiger gear comes from. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Stand up behind, we'll do a picture of this, so we can put that on the website. You want everybody that's here for this?
Yep.
What are we doing? Stay here. Okay. All right.
You didn't even start.
No, I didn't.
I did.
Okay, you're welcome.
Get you just to hold the
All right, David, you ready for that?
You okay if we post it on our website? Okay, thank you.
All right, Tina and Monica, we need you both. Next, we're going to I guess we're honoring Monica Hammer, who's leaving us. Monica Hammer is our operations assistant for Loveland Police Department, and we're here in appreciation for her 17 years of service to the city. And she is leaving us, but she's staying close. Job with the Loveland City School District, so we can't knock her for that. But I think Tina Kern's going to kick this off.
I've got a couple things to
Just
say.
a few?
Just a few.
All right.
I'll make it brief. But thank you, Mayor Bailey, Council, City Administration. I'm Tina Kearns. I'm the Systems Manager for the Police Department. And as you've just heard, Monica Hammer recently accepted a job opportunity, and she resigned from her role as our Operations Assistant at the Police Department. Tonight we are honoring Monica's dedication throughout 17 years of service to the City of Loveland. I've been fortunate to know Monica, and I've worked with her since she started at Loveland PD. In thinking back over her public service career, I realize she's answered to several variations of her name and a few aliases. Monica Hammer, aka Officer Hammer, for Lincoln 34, Badge 222, P.O. Hammer, and sometimes just Hammer. She came to Loveland as Officer Hammer from the Cincinnati Police Department. She graduated from Cincinnati's Police Academy in 1999, and after graduation was employed full-time with that department until 2005. In 2005, after leaving Cincinnati, Officer Hammer became a part-time Loveland police officer and was known as Unit 4 Lincoln 34 and Badge 222. 8 years later, she took on added responsibilities as our part-time Loveland police officer and operations assistant. And later she developed that position into a vital full-time role for our department. Personally, I know Monica's favorite alias is Mom. Family is the reason she and her husband Matt settled on making Loveland their home. They've brought up a son Charlie and daughter Kaylee in this community, and they're very involved in Loveland schools and sporting activities. And now Monica, Mrs. Hammer, we wish you well with your new job, and we thank you. It's very hard not to cry after that last presentation. Thank you for contributing to the depth of integrity at the Loveland Police Department over the past 17 years. I personally appreciate your determination in improving law enforcement processes and for advancing the role of police record specialists throughout our state and nationally. Loveland Police thanks you for enriching the agency with genuine concern for your coworkers, neighbors, and all Loveland residents. Monica, it's been a pleasure, and we're going to miss you.
Certificate of recognition for your 17 years.
Thank you.
And I think Dave has some
You need another arm. Your daughter wanted to
Kayla.
Caleb. So just real quickly, I don't want to take up too much time, but and Chief Ray's here too. Chief Ray really believed heavily in Tina and Monica and what they did for the day-to-day behind-the-scenes operations, and we wholeheartedly supported that. And she really became just a figment of what happens up in that safety center, and it means a lot to us. And what we're trying to do now, which Monica is fittingly the first person to get this, is in certain increments. We deviate a little bit just because she's 17, but we're trying to start recognizing employees at 5 and 10 and 15 and 20, and just we thought it would be fitting to start with Monica as she leaves. So that's thanks Corey, because he brought a little bling with him from Union Township. But it's I think if you've come to even one council meeting, you know that our employees are pretty important. From a public works employee to a police chief to everything in between, they come here and they get sworn in, and it's a big deal. And Monica's was a major part of what happens in the day-to-day operation. So thanks a lot, Monica.
Thank you. I would just like to say thank you to my family for all your support over the years. My LPD family, who you will still be a part of my life, whether you want to be or not, and City Council and Mayor Bailey, thank you for allowing me to work in a great city, and the school district for allowing me to continue to be a part of the community in another type of assignment, but still able to be involved with the children in the community. So thank you.
Take your picture.
All right, as Dave mentioned, this is a new program we're starting where we would want to honor our employees that meet certain thresholds, because our employees are important to us, and we don't want to just see you once in a while out on the road or in an office. Sometimes we like to have you come here and see us all, so we can thank you for your service. So first we have Thomas Doman, Public Works mechanic and maintenance worker, who has been here. He had a 5-year anniversary on April 10th.
So around 2012, we hired a mechanic position, which was kind of a take back for us. We had to basically give up a maintenance position, to take on this role. And we had some bumps along the road. So Thomas has been here for 5 years. It's now been 10 since we've had this position. But with Thomas, we've got the best of both worlds. He is an awesome maintenance worker, and he is a heck of a mechanic. So our lifespans of vehicles, for instance, went from about 8-9 years to 15 years, roughly. He's all around a great city works employee, period, not just mechanic. So thank you, Thomas.
I just want to add a little bit of what Scott said. Our employees don't just sit back at the Public Works garage fixing trucks. I rolled up on a water leak Saturday night at 10 p.m., went through a barricade, didn't see, and somebody was yelling at me saying, "What the hell? Who do you think you are? What the hell are you doing?" And it was Thomas. But the point of the story was they do everything. And that's what makes all of us, from police, everybody that works for the city, nothing's beneath them. And that's really important, Thomas. I really appreciate all you've done. Thank you.
Go.
Really wasn't prepared.
You said you were good off the cuff.
Well, I've seen a couple.
Well, thanks everybody for the opportunity to be a mechanic maintenance worker. I really didn't think I had to do a speech, but
I told you to prepare.
so yeah. But thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Dave, you have to be in.
Yes.
I like being back here.
All right. Cindy Hopfenstein. Cindy celebrated she's our city engineer, our esteemed city engineer, who celebrated her 15-year anniversary on April 1st. Congratulations.
So she can stand here because she's my right hand at all parts. Cindy, I've been blessed to work with Cindy the entire time that I've been with the city. So there's a little bit of gap in between our hiring dates, but we spent pretty much the whole entire thing together, and gosh, I don't even know where to start. I don't. I know that almost everybody on council, everybody sitting in here has dealt with Cindy at some capacity. She's always there. Yeah, right. She's always there to help. Sometimes she doesn't get to say what everybody wants to hear, but by the time they walk away, they understand, they're happy. She's just that person. She's the best person. I mean, honestly, no, I can't say enough. I'll quit.
I don't know 2001, which is her comm line, how many times in the course of the day I dial that number. But when we bring projects to you and you see Broadway being stabilized, or what we just did on Miami View, or that incredible project we just did on Main Street, this is who's putting them all together. She's putting the funding together. She's helping us write the memos. We are so fortunate as a city to have an in-house city engineer, and people don't realize it. I don't want other people to know. I don't want Madeira to know and Wyoming to know, because not only is it a real benefit, can she bring in 10 times her salary every year in grant money, but she coordinates this. She fights for it. She's on the committees that helps rank them so she can learn how to. She'll submit projects for grants. No, we're not going to get funded, because she'll get notes on how to make the application better next time. She saves so much money for this city, and literally, she could fire you and you'd give her a hug on the way out. She is probably next to Dawn. She's the sweetest person. So I really enjoy working for her. I know when I leave, she's going to go, thank God. Because 2001 is one of the numbers. So, Cindy, you're that 15 year. We're sort of, again, Corey for the balloon.
Very much, Mayor Bailey and Dave and Scott and council. I've had a great time working here for 15 years. It was kind of funny because before this, I worked private sector engineering as consultant to 25, 30 different municipalities. And we used to tell all of our clients, we will be there with you from start to finish of a project. And I used to think that meant something huge, you know, like we'd apply for the grant and we'd help you through the design process, bid it, construct it, and we'd wrap it up and we'd be done. We were like, yeah, gold star. And it's funny because this year I am just now seeing one of my first few projects up in the Heights with the tot lots. Yeah. We're redoing them again. So now I feel like that's full cycle, you know, you've seen it twice. You've seen the whole life of it deteriorate and people complain and you get another grant. So it's been a really fun ride and I've loved it and I can hope to continue here much longer. So thank you guys.
This is what it's about.
And last, but certainly not least, we have Kyle Liebelhausen, our K-9 officer, 20-year anniversary on May 15th. 20 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, you don't got to do it together.
So I've been here quite a while, and it's funny to see people, as we were just saying, like Cindy was just saying, full circle, how people develop and the leaders that grow out of the young kids you bring on. I knew Kyle before he was here. He rode with me before he was a cop, got on with Loveland, and I've watched him grow from a rookie guy running around wanting to tear up the world to a nationally recognized K-9 officer, a nationally recognized mentor and leader of other K-9 officers. Also as an officer in charge in our daily work that we do here at Loveland. He is integral whenever there is not a supervisor on duty. And quite frankly, even when I'm working on day shift, he runs the shift. He runs the people. He runs the calls. He does an excellent job. We're very fortunate to have him, and I can't wait to see what else he does in the rest of his career. Congrats.
I just want to point out again, because the things that you don't see as the public. So we're up there and Kathy writes on a note, passes it to me. I think we should name the new dog park, Havercamp Dog Park. From there to him, that all happened. He put so much time and effort in, up and beyond the call of duty, to have that dog park named what it was, the sign, the wording, coordinating everything with the family. Those are the things you don't see that I, as a city manager, appreciate, because I know that because Sean hired him or whoever hired him, we know that they're good officers. And for them to do the things up and above, like Jesse and Mike and Elliot and Kevin, we know that. It's just all the extra things that they do. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks. All right, thank you. So here's this. You got the biggest one because you're 20 years.
Well, I don't know how much to say or what to say other than their line. I don't do much anything. Just thank you for the opportunity. It's been, I'm looking at this thing here. It says 20 years. I didn't think I was that old, but here I am. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I've had a great time. Hopefully I have a few more left in me. Get to that 25-year mark. I'm measuring my career now in dog years. So you all are laughing. You guys are like, yeah, he really does. So anyway, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's what I said.
Well, Kyle, you said you didn't feel you were that old, but we all heard you moan when you got out. Oh, God. Yeah.
Bounce it out.
Gotta have the flanks covered.
So, how good was it?
I'm sure about the same show. Take care.
A lot of reward.
Right. Oh gosh, I'm in. Let's take
cozy.
That wasn't last
Yeah. That's last
He hasn't left for vacation yet.
You absolutely should have stayed there just to see what she said.
Keep practicing. See you.
Yes.
Oh, nice stuff. All right, I think next is open forum.
Okay. Back up again. Does she have to amend the agenda? Misty, does she amend the agenda?
No. She needs to. All right, Tom Scovanner.
Oh, when does she? Anytime.
Feel like a downer after all that good stuff. Citizen input is essential for truly representative government at all levels, but it's particularly important at the local level. People can be intimidated by the trappings of government. Government officials, especially local officials, can mitigate that by encouraging input from citizens, open forums, citizen committees, surveys, etc. And Loveland's pretty good about that. Citizens remember when their thoughts and ideas are incorporated into government policy, but governments can lose legitimacy when the voice of the people is limited or worse, ignored. I remember that many of you campaigned saying you would listen to the voices of the people of Loveland, and that's as it should be in a representative government. Tonight is an opportunity to follow through on that promise. Before you tonight is an update of the Comprehensive Master Plan. It's not the original update to the CMP. The original proposed updated CMP was genuinely a product of the people from Loveland. Updating the CMP was the end product of an extensive endeavor resulting from months of work involving at least one survey of over 200 people. The planning consultant, Elizabeth Fields, was amazed by the number of responses to that survey, actually. She said, typically you don't get that many. There are also hundreds of other citizen comments, many committee hours, and additional less formal inputs. The update was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission and was approved with one small but rather significant change. That commission of 5 decided in a few minutes that they should override the months of work and input of hundreds of citizens and the strategic choice, as Mrs. Fields put it, made by the steering committee who heard from the people of Loveland. Mrs. Fields said the steering committee wanted to keep with the expectation of lower density, but place any change requirements on any developers in an annexation situation. She is who said that it was a strategic thing that the committee decided on through the process. Go back and listen to the discussion. It was clear that the people of Loveland wanted low density as to annexation of property into the city. The steering committee, charged with the responsibility of updating the CMP after all the citizen input, specifically chose to require annexed property to come into Loveland as low density. That's the way the people wanted it. That wasn't how the steering committee actually started. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But why did the Planning and Zoning Commission delete that hyphenated word, low density, with regard to annexed property? Well, because low density, and I quote a commission member, quote, puts the commission in a tough spot, end quote. Mrs. Fields later said that, and this is in her presentation to the committee, or to the commission, that the plan started more favorable toward mixed use and multifamily, but the feedback from the community didn't support that. The people wanted low density. So the commission amended the proposed CMP even after they were told that people were in favor of low density. The commission voted to ignore the voices of the people in order to make the commission's job easier. Is that the reason we have government? Bureaucrats can have an easier job? Well, the answer is obvious, and it's a resounding no. Making changes when property comes in should not be easy. Generally, developers want to make money. They are business people, and there's nothing wrong with them making a profit. However, their new proposals should be analyzed thoroughly from the point of view of how does this benefit the citizens of Loveland. Planning and zoning changes have a lasting impact and should always involve detailed analysis and community input. It's by its nature should be a hard job. Government, especially local government, is outreach of the people that they govern. Elected officials receive their mandates from the elections and the petitions from citizens. Sometimes the will of the people is difficult to perceive, but fortunately in this situation you have a clear message from the people through the steering committee's deliberate strategic choice. Quote, to quote Mrs. Fields, if land gets annexed in, it's annexed in your lowest residential, end quote. If a developer comes along with a compelling reason, then it can be rezoned. Listen to the people. Amend the currently proposed comprehensive master plan back to the original update. The people wanted low density for newly annexed property. Put that one hyphenated but critical word back into paragraph that is titled Expansion Opportunities on packet page number 65. The CMP page is 22. And I quote, this is the way it was when it was proposed to planning and zoning. This may include new low-density residential development to the north and east of the city and new commercial development along primary thoroughfares, end quote. That is what the people wanted. That is what they told the steering committee. The steering committee understood that after hearing from the people. Listen to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is review and approval of minutes from the July 12th, 2020 meeting. Are there any changes, additions? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
Or second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
I abstain because I was not present.
Motion carries 7-0.
Next is a second reading of an ordinance. Will you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance authorizing the city manager to grant an easement to Duke Energy, Ohio.
Is there any comment on the ordinance? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
I'm going to abstain as this is adjacent, or not adjacent, but close to my residence.
Ordinance 68 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
So tonight's sort of a big night in terms of the city's park space. This is the final step of many steps that will annex in the Claremont County Park District property. The Claremont County Park District bought the property from the Grail back in 2018 and actually immediately inquired about annexation, but the connectivity requirements per the Ohio Revised Code, it didn't touch at all. And but in the meantime, at such time, the other 100 acres was adopted to the west by City Council in 2021. That then brought in the connectivity for the Claremont County Park District, and then that is when we immediately began to annex in the Park District property. A couple important notes on the Park District property. Real quick math, the current city currently has 157.7 acres of parkland. This will increase the city's parkland by 64% with this roughly 100 acres of parkland. The other important part of this is how the Park District bought the property. They utilized a funding source called Clean Ohio. And Clean Ohio, and I am always the first to say I'm not an expert on anything, but in my former position, I bought a tremendous amount of property after a flood with a very similar restrictions. And these are, so if for the residents of the city, adjoining property owners, the people that live in White Pillars, you will know that this 100 acres of land will be park space in perpetuity. It is in the easement. It is deeply restricted per the funding source. So I think that is a really a positive step for the city. And plus the park, the process, the design park, I included a very rough schematic. It is really truly be an open space style park. Josh Torbeck, he's the new director of the Park District. I think it was very quotable, and it was really interesting when we were talking about it. And he followed up with me and he said, as we mentioned, this was him describing the new park that will go in there. As we mentioned, we're looking to utilize sustainable practices such as green roofs, stormwater management practices, renewable energy, etc. Keeping sustainability as a priority, the park will provide outdoor classroom options, natural play areas, and what we are calling pods or hubs with electric and Wi-Fi. The goal is to provide a natural setting for people to work outside, for students to meet, for group projects, for a parent to work from home while their kids play. You get the idea. He was in an email. So that plus they have a committee together, and the city will always have a representative. I am the current representative, and we will always have a representative from the city overseeing this park plan. So we're really excited. This is a big step for this city to have now 257 acres of parkland in this city. So this is the final step. So we sort of follow a calendar. That's how we do these annexations, because you don't want to drop the ball. So 60 days ago, roughly, this is the first regular meeting after 60 days from when the action by the Claremont County Commissioners was placed on the desk of the clerk, i.e. Misty. And from that made this the first regular meeting based on Ohio Revised Code. Council has 60 days from them, or 120 days from the day it was put on her, to take formal action. So this is a very simple legislation that we use to formally adopt the property into the city, 99.831 acres. The next step is we'll certify this and Misty will send it off to the county, and that is pretty official. We'll really take no other step. My fiscal impact on this is pretty limited. That's a pretty standard price for an annexation plat. Due to conflict of interest, and Joe being who Joe is, we used Manley Burke and Fisher for this project because he represents the community and they did a wonderful job, but we do like having Joe. There may be a little bit over, so if anybody's due, there may be they read through that. So pretty excited about this. I think it's a big step for the city, sort of on the heels of what you just did with changing Hidden Creek to the West Loveland Nature Preserve. And I think council should be congratulated on everything they did, and it's going to be an exciting park. So what's that? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. That was all I had.
Okay. Any comments or questions?
I would just observe that from the comprehensive master plan we're going to consider next, green space is a priority. So we're doing I think, good work in this particular criteria. And 257 acres? Is that what you said?
We currently have 157 acres. That does not include places that we just call open space. That's actual dedicated park space. So now we'll have 257 acres as soon as you adopt this resolution.
Yes, Mr. Bateman.
So, and as you were talking about this, and I think it's well known, but this is a future Claremont County park. And so my question is, is there any, as it's being developed, surely this doesn't have a definite answer, but it appears that this would be maintained by Claremont County Park 100%. Staff.
It's all owned by Chris Klingman. Yes, it'll be fully maintained. That park district came in here and asked you guys to support a levy that they had on the ballot, and that was used to be unheard of if the Claremont County could ever get a park levy passed. Why? Because your two largest townships, Miami Township and Union Township, had their own levies. So they always fought an uphill battle, knowing that how likelihood are those people, but because of how they did it and how they sold it. And what they've also done, they turned that around and do a grant program that this city's received quite a bit of money from McCoy Park. They are a great park district, and they operate, and they really creative. Chris Klingman, who got the money from Clean Ohio to buy this, boy, he masters that. He could do seminars on how to use Clean Ohio money. So they're very proud of what they're bringing to this part. They see it as what they're bringing to this part of the county. Let's be realistic. But we know that because we will provide water service to a restroom, which should be about the only physical building on this property that solicited the annexation. Very mutual. There's no tax dollars. So Miami Township isn't. It's really a win for the city.
And therefore, we'll be bringing in what will be the largest parks in city limits, and then not
Phillips
have to pay for the
because Phillips is 40.9, and think about how big Phillips is, and then double it. So that's pretty significant park space.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, want to read the resolution, please?
Resolution accepting the annexation of land from Miami Township, Claremont County, Ohio, including 99.831 acres of land owned by the Claremont County Park District.
Any comment on the resolution? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Resolution 69 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Wright?
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. This evening we have the comprehensive plan, the 2022 comprehensive master plan. Really this is the culmination of a couple years worth of work here. And Mr. Hart and the committee really a lot of heavy lifting in that regard to get us to the point where we are. So just without, belaboring all of the process, involved multiple meetings, steering committee meetings. public input, public surveys, really a robust response in that, and really got a plan that captures what the citizens and the community, stakeholders, businesses really saw for the city for kind of the next development period in that. Where we are, as you know, in April of this year, the Comprehensive Master Plan Steering Committee held a meeting and approved a final version, which was forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission then made a recommendation for one modification, and that plan was then presented to City Council in June of this year. And then there was an initial discussion that took place, and Council now having around a month and a half to look at it. That document is unchanged and is before Council now for your review and if Council sees fit, approval. Just some notes here regarding the plan. We have newly created land use designations. Really, the plan dives deep into revitalization of the Love Madera corridor and also the Chestnut Street property, presenting several options for development. So those are really kind of key points in addition to green space and protection of existing neighborhoods. With that, by adopting the plan as recommended, Council will establish a foundation upon which to base future land use recommendations for the city and help direct growth on Love Madera and Chestnut, as these are these are very high profile pieces of property that we've talked about and areas that we've talked about repeatedly. Policy options here: you could approve the plan as presented with the legislation. You could make further modifications or elect not to adopt the plan. The fiscal impact, there's really no fiscal impact associated with the adoption of the plan per se. However, the plan itself will have impacts to the city for the foreseeable future with regard to shaping development. The recommendation is to adopt the proposed legislation, thereby adopting the Comprehensive Master Plan for the City of Loveland, Ohio, as amended and recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And the comp plan has been presented as an attachment to the memorandum.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Before we take questions, I do want to thank the individuals who were on this committee. It was a long, several-year process, two of whom are here, Diane Powers and Sherry Hamlin. So thank you very much to the committee who spent countless hours working on this project for the benefit of your fellow citizens. So we thank you for that. Mr. Hart, before we get started, would you, as the chair, would you have a care to comment?
Yeah, just a couple things I'd like to point out. One, Sherry Hamlin takes some of the best minutes of any person that has ever worked on a committee in the history of Loveland. So I thank her for the immense amount of time she put into that. Thank you very much. As you mentioned, the members that you laid out there, in addition to Tim Butler, Dave Fagan, Dave Scott, Jay Stewart, Lynn Zook, Pete Sexton, Sam David, all put in a ton of work, and I appreciate all the work that they put in on that. It's just a couple of points I'd like to talk about. The length of it. I know that the document was supposed to be put together quite a bit quicker. Obviously, COVID played a large part in that, as well as as part of getting community input, time put together to have our walkthroughs, our gallery walks, and things like that. Trying to find locations. I want to thank Oasis Turf and Tree for opening up their building to us. Very, very nice of them. They did a first class job, hosting us that night, hosting the community. Thank Liz Fields. I think she did a good job. She was very receptive to the things we wanted to do, also guiding us along the way. We put a large focus, as you noticed when you read through it, on the Loveland Madera corridor. That was obviously the most needed area of improvement we felt like in the city. The downtown area has its own plan, so we didn't do anything really attached to this historic downtown area. We did talk about the Commerce Park. We talked about a lot of different future land use options. We looked at ways to get green space involved on Loveland Madera. We looked at ways to maintain green space throughout the city. We kept in mind traffic and parking needs and what that would look like and what kind of future land use options we were talking about. Among those was an effort to limit high density housing in close to downtown. So we changed some future land use designations there. But it is important to point out, and it's critical to point out that this is not a planning and zoning code. As we consider this, and I say that more for the community than for members, but this is not codified. This is a suggestion. It's a look in the future. So with that, I field any questions you may have.
Yep. I'll just follow up with what John was saying. Comprehensive plans are wonderful right up to the point that they don't have a zoning code that helps enforce the policies in place. So what you will be seeing soon, as we are, when I get back from vacation Monday, this really sort of starts, this is how long we work on the city budget. We will be jumping whole hog into the budget. And part of the next budget will include, which will start off right at the beginning of the year, will be consulting services to help us for a complete and total revamp of our zoning code. And that is really important. Otherwise, it goes from, in my opinion, comprehensive plan, having a corresponding zoning code that puts in place, changes it from something that sits on the shelf to something that really is a tool. So I think we're going to follow that up. One other item, I think, and Councilmember Phelps can do this, and I know Pat Mays was involved, that what gets lost a little bit was when the charter was rewritten, one of the things that sort of flew low was that there was a provision in the new charter that the comprehensive plan should be rewritten updated every 10 years. This one, to say it's old is a bit of an understatement. So I really think that is going to come into play. So technically, if you adopt this, the 10 years starts ticking. And that's important because that's something that the Charter Committee did. So I think you will see a very significant zoning code amendment process begin here. Corey has a lot of skills, so it'll be sort of a team effort with Corey and a consultant such as Liz from McBride. So that is our way of saying this isn't going to sit on the shelf. We're going to make it work because it'll have cools. Green spaces on Loveland Madeira Road are nice, but if you don't have an element to put them in. So it's really important that we follow right behind this with a total revamp of our zoning code. And we plan on doing that. I just think it's important.
All right. Before we get into questions and comments, Mr. Bateman, do you want to speak from a planning and zoning standpoint?
Sure. I can do that. I think one of the things when we were, so that was one of the first meetings I've been on planning and zoning since the start of this year. And we had a work session to review this. And I think what struck me was a lot of the detail that goes into this on the specific opportunities. As Mr. Hart mentioned, when we talked about the Loveland Madeira corridor and the Chestnut Street, I think that was certainly valuable input to work forward. Certainly the conversation around matching or the zoning code with what we saw here was something that was sort of one of the requests that P&Z made after that work session was can we give teeth to this and make it so that it's not incongruous to what the code is. The other issue I think that we talked about was the expansion opportunities, and I think that was one of those areas in the comprehensive master plan that was not as specific as a lot of the other areas, and I think the recommendation to remove the phrase low density from the expansion opportunities was so that we wouldn't be boxed in with some opportunity in that area, because the consultant even spoke that paragraph was meant to be very inclusive of a lot of the feedback from the community and what was seen, and it was also deliberately written in a vague manner. At that point, I don't think that land had been annexed in to the city. So the conversation that we had at that P&Z meeting was that to mention residential, to leave it as residential, and not be so specific in that one instance when the rest of that statement was very broad in comparison to a lot of the detailed explorations of the aforementioned areas, Chestnut and Loveland Madeira. So I think those were the nexus of our recommendations. But again, I think this does do a very good job of communicating to future councils and to the community at large about where Loveland is. I think it does a lot of self-reflection. There's a lot of good input from the community, but more importantly, where Loveland is meant to go, and that all of the future land use designations in that map is very helpful to do that.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions? Vice Mayor?
Speaking of specificity, how important is the implementation section? I noticed at page 120, there's 3 or 4 pages of very specific steps to be taken, short-term, mid-term, and long-term. How's that? How important is that?
It's important also because the city gets to play a role in that with your ownership of the Chestnut Street property. That really puts you in a pivotal role. You already created a community entertainment district, which is one of the recommendations that came out of this. You're already beginning the connectivity of your subdivisions with a major connection of the Loveland Miamiville Road. So that is a big part of it. But implementation also has to do with the zoning code, and I think we're going to talk about that later tonight in that amended agenda, because they can work against you. They really can be. The zoning code can be a deterrence to the right kind of development, and I think that's important. You're seeing what I believe the historic preservation guidelines will do 5 years from now. You'll be able to look back and go, we had a gem downtown and we protected it with these guidelines. So the implementation is critical, but having the right code in place is also. And I think that if the city does Chestnut the way I think Corey is going to run this through and the other steps that we're doing, I think that is going to have quite a ripple effect on the entire Loveland Madeira Road corridor. Plus, you're going to be following that up tonight with the first phase and redoing all the pedestrian ways on Loveland Madeira Road to put us in line for funding through OKI. That we are taking, so you'll see them in the council goals tonight in the first update. That there's a part of it. The missing cog is a code that puts it in place. When we decided we wanted to really rejuvenate the heights, what did you do? You sold off property, you created a grant program, but it was nothing if you didn't have the code enforcement to go with it. And that's part of the tools that make things work. And I think that's it. You've got incentives in place with maybe their TIF districts and all of that. I think part of your implementation is who you hired as assistant city manager, because you're bringing in these kind of skills to help put this thing in place. So it's a big part. And implementation is why this is what stops it from sitting on a shelf and never getting opened again. So it's really important. And I really think it's wonderful that the charter committee is forcing the hands that this thing gets updated and doesn't sit for 18 years? I don't know how long. I'm not bad mouthing anyway. COVID hit it. The thing got thrown out. We wanted to do the downtown first. It makes sense how we did it, but it's so important that the tools are in place to get what you want to get. Just imagine if you take a snapshot right now of Loveland Madeira Road and put it in a time capsule and go back and look at what Loveland Madeira Road looks like from Diane's house all the way to Oasis, and look at it and take pictures and then think about it from a few years from now. If this plays out right, it ain't going to look like Loveland Madeira Road anymore. And I think that's important. So I don't know. I get excited about that things because I think people wrongly think we only spend time worrying about downtown, and that is not true. And I think this just reasserts the fact that we do care about all corners of the city. So I don't know. I guess that was a speech. Did I really answer your question?
Sure
I didn't really mean it, but
I lost track.
I know. I'm sorry.
No.
Ramble, I guess.
Mr. Ori.
A couple things. I spent a lot of time reading through this and knowing that it was coming, or when I came back on council, that this was coming up. So I had Misty print me a copy of it, and I spent quite a bit of time. One of the things that stuck in my head in reading this, and it was brought up by Mr. Kennedy twice now, is it says right in the report, this is not to be put on the shelf. And I think as soon as this is adopted, each one of us should have a copy of this bound, sitting here in our desk every meeting. So, because we need to. It's a plan, and we need to make sure that we follow it. So.
Anyone else?
I would like to thank the entire group for the massive amount of work they did.
Yeah.
The thoughtfulness with which it was prepared, and the communication with the public along the way. You guys did a great job.
Yeah.
Agreed. Any further comment? Yes, Mr. King.
Yeah, I think I would echo the same comments. And I would also thank Mayor and Councilman Hart for foreseeing the need for a little bit more time and allowing the extra time to review. It was enjoyable reading through this document in part because I like things that are planned and thought out and not just reactionary, and so it shows that. I thought too it's a very positive document in that it shows. So oftentimes we want to focus on the negative aspects of a community and the things that are not working. There are a lot of things that are working, and that are a lot of things that have not worked and have been fixed. And I think it kind of blends that in nicely in showing the reason why it's important to revisit this on occasion. When this first came out, I guess it's been a month ago now. One of the comments in there was regarding the fact that the change that Planning and Zoning had recommended. And I contacted Councilman Hart. We didn't connect because he was out and we traded messages. But my reason for contacting him was to find out a little bit more about that and kind of revisiting that, in that particular section talking about expansion opportunities. One of the things that I guess, in looking at this and the comments that have been made, this is not something that is just a showpiece. It's not something we're creating just for the heck of it so that we can say, okay, thank goodness we've got that out of the way for 10 years. Now we'll do whatever we feel like. If we're really going to treat this as a plan and something that is of importance, then, we should make sure that it has the right language in it and the right vision and so forth. I think that it is reasonable to say that the things that are said on that particular section do fall in line with the idea of low density. I think that, personally, last fall when I was trying to campaign and people kept asking me questions, one of the things I kept saying over and over again, probably till people were sick of it, was I'm for balanced growth. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you can't just say we're never going to do anything from this point forward and just fix it. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we have to take everything that wants to happen and just let it happen and say that, hey, it doesn't matter. I think it's the reason why planning and zoning is an important part of a community. I'm glad to hear that we're going to be looking at that again. The other thing that kind of ties in to me with the low density aspect is also during our council goal setting session, we talked about Cindy's tree program that she brought to us and talked to several of us. I think that kind of came late in the process, and so there's not a lot of inclusion in that. I was certainly glad to see that, talking about the Loveland Madeira Corridor, there is reference to trees and things. I would hope that, we can kind of work some of her work into that as well. In regards of things like tree selection and those types of things, because, some of the low scrubby trees that are close to the road might benefit in one way, but might hurt in another. And so, that's part of it as well. So I guess all in all, I think in general, I think it's a good master plan. It's a very forward looking document. I think it has a lot of the right things in it. It would be unfair for this committee to spend all of this time and expect that everybody is going to say 100% everything in here is exactly what I would do, because that's not realistic. I'm sure the committee probably had a few disagreements along the way as to what should be in here. So anyway, I guess just as a point of discussion, because it has been, it was brought up and planning and zoning did change it. I know it's already been addressed a little bit by Councilman Bateman, but I guess the question I would like to ask is just, is that something that, and I guess I'll express it this way, if that language is in here, it makes it harder to change annexation, perhaps, because it has to go through a process. But at the same time, because this is not codified, isn't that the idea of this, is to say this is our vision, is we prefer things to be low density. Doesn't mean we can't do anything else. We could make it high density. We could make it whatever we want through the process. But if we're saying that this is our goal, is that not our goal? Is low density, or does it matter? And again, goes back to Councilman Bateman's comment. Perhaps it's just not worth saying at all. It's just a generality that we want to leave alone. So I guess that's my question. As a point of discussion, perhaps, is this important to the plan? And I'll ask Mr. Hart maybe to address that as the chairperson.
To that point, I would say that it was a goal of the committee to work towards that end, in terms of having low density be a overriding theme in terms of moving forward, for a couple of reasons. One was this: it's a 10-year document, as Mr. Kennedy pointed out, something that goes forever. And that was mostly focused on downtown, because the conversation about annexation, if you'll notice that is limited and vague in the plan, and that is intentional, because we didn't feel like it was appropriate to put in our plan that we wanted to go out into Warren County, Claremont County, and start land snatching from people. We didn't feel like that was appropriate. We felt like if those things came up, that those didn't necessarily need to be in the plan, and we didn't need to actively be looking to annex. So in terms of where the low density piece of that conversation comes up moving out, we felt like it left it where the current planning and zoning, where the current code is at, which is that if somebody annexes in, it comes in as single family low density. So we felt like that kept with the code. So, and that's also, quite frankly, what we heard as we went through it. Now, we didn't hear from everybody. To your point, we didn't hear from everybody in the entire community, but we did hear from quite a few people. I went back and watched the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting where they talked about it. I thought the conversation was pretty balanced in terms of what people were looking for, and I think that it's also important to realize that in that conversation that the point was brought up that we need places for people to downsize and empty nesters to move to, but the reality of that's not what developers are bringing in. Developers are bringing in a much higher end unit, right? So I say all that to say that it was intentional when we put it in. I understand why Planning and Zoning decided to move it out. I think they tried to not box us in with this document, which I can see. But I would be remiss if I didn't support the work that we did and the version that we handed to Planning and Zoning, if I'm being fair.
Okay, if I can jump in on the discussion. So another sort of layer to this that I think has struck me was in the development conversation. One of the things that they want, that they're considering in terms of issues, when they look at the demographics of Loveland and they sort of try to paint a picture, housing affordability becomes, a concern for Loveland. It's right up front at the document. They talk about median household income and median house value. Some of these questions posed, to the community is Loveland on the verge of becoming unaffordable? What kinds of housing types are we missing in Loveland? Do we need to fill a gap in the market? And I think that the residential low density land use designation, you see overwhelmingly the majority of this area in Loveland is of that single family low density. And then there's a lot of attention paid to the heights. They call out the Loveland Heights residential as a specific sub designation and sort of reference that neighborhood as being, a gem worth preserving and deserving of special attention. Some of the other things that kind of struck me were in the survey data, I think. So, considering that the population and feedback from the community was something that informed a lot of what was going on with the Comprehensive Master Plan Committee. What struck me was, I think one of the questions was, what kind of development would you support? And so they talk about adding an additional dwelling unit in the backyard, an accessory dwelling unit. Certainly that's something more tangentially related. But again, these are the types of expansion opportunities that you might see within a single family low density development. But if I can find the information, I believe there was a question asked about what type of future development would you support, and it was interesting that it was 50-50 in terms of single family housing and apartments. I think if I read that correctly in one of the survey. I'm struggling to find that piece of information right now, so I could.
I don't recall that.
Yeah, it was in like the appendix, but. All that is to say, really, that I see that as an important issue within our community, and I'm glad to see that being addressed. I think when you imagine, it was in a section talking about, would you support tearing down 4 single-family homes and rebuilding them with a larger structure? That's what concerns me about targeting everything low density. I'm not so concerned about the multifamily or the big, high density apartment complexes as being something that's going to go into the community, but restricting the types of housing stock that could be developed or enhanced when we talk about, there was a lot of discussion around patio homes, and Mr. Hart mentioned the issue about downsizing. And so, the future of multifamily structures and where we're going in our demographics and in the housing market, I think really requires a little bit of flexibility in the way that you're sort of envisioning yourselves. We are a desirable downtown community. People want to have walkability. They want to live where the density is, if that's something you're looking for, but you also want to be able to afford to live in a community that has all of these amenities. So my thinking is that when we talk about expansion opportunities where there is no land use designation, where, as this was being written, it wasn't even in our city border, nor was it zoned in any way. And if there are future expansion opportunities, again, as they mentioned on that page, in the north and into the east, Mr. Ping is correct. It does paint the picture of residential low density without saying that. I think giving people that are either working with city staff to try to apply for new zoning recommendations, or folks that sit on planning and zoning, the ability to read those and infer those in the code without having to, as I said before, being restricted in some way by the specific use of that word, low density. So I sort of a picture of where my thinking is on that discussion, but I'm sure we can talk more. Again, I just, for me, again, the thing that I said before, it really holds true. It doesn't go into such great detail as the other specific recommendations do, and that was one big reason why be so specific in that case when you're not going to describe in further detail.
Just one quick question.
Yes, Mr. Blair.
And maybe this is to Mr. Brown. This is an aspirational document. It carries no force of law, but it should serve as a hard copy guideline to whatever changes get made in the zoning code. Is that reasonable to say?
Yes.
So it's the zoning code. The new zoning code will take precedence over whatever's in here. And so as we develop the new zoning code, whoever is on that group should have, to Mr. Ori's great idea, should have a copy of this entire document with them for every meeting.
Yep. I would point out that there are portions of our code that actually talk about being in compliance or acting consistent with this plan.
And
so
we
it
should
is a little bit
strongly
stronger.
Encourage that.
Yeah, it's a little stronger than just a guideline.
Okay, thank you.
To that point, I think it's important to note 112307 of the city's Code of Ordinances states all property annexed into the city shall be annexed in at residential low density. That's how they all come in. So from the standpoint of that code, nothing that you're doing tonight changes the fact that the Claremont County Park District property that you just annexed in is now residential low density. The other part of the Grail property is resident. We don't have anything with less density than that. So what I think the point would be is if there's an annexation somewhere in Warren County in the future, nothing will change the fact that it's coming in as residential low density. So how does this tool and your amendments to the zoning code dictate how someone who wants to develop that property comes back and says, yeah, I know I came in as residential low density, but I want to do this. So that's really where the plan plays. Nothing's changed 112307. That is a city code. It's not being changed. So you're not changing the fact that upon annexation, that's what it's zoned, residential low density.
Okay.
That's a pretty significant thing, what you're doing there. You don't have a code that says they can all get together and decide what it should be zoned upon annexation. It clearly says any territory annexed into the city upon the effective date of the annexation or merger be zoned as residential low density. That's what it reads. So,
all right. Any further comments? I would agree with what Mr. Braun said. There are ways that this plan is used in our zoning code, that there are references made to it where, if you want to do, I think, isn't it part of the SPD process, I believe. Mm-hmm. If you want to, that you have to meet the master plan. So, and to Mr. Hart's point, certainly we all very much appreciate the work of the committee. We said that. I don't think it in any way detracts from the work of the committee to also listen to planning and zoning. There's a reason that the process here is that their planning and zoning has a role, and their role is to consider this plan and to make the changes that they believe are necessary and important to this plan going forward. So same as council. If we were to make changes, even addition or to what planning and zoning did, that doesn't mean we're in any way denigrating the work of the committee. We have a role here as well, and so does planning and zoning. And I read that paragraph knowing that this was going to be an issue about 25 times and agree completely with what Mr. Bateman said. It is all very sort of big picture. Until with that language, like it was clear that there was an agenda to do that, and that's fine. But I do think that needs to be covered in our zoning, and it is, and it's something that we can look at when we revisit the zoning as well, if it needs to be beefed up in some fashion. But I'm satisfied with the language that currently exists with planning and zoning's input. It's just my personal opinion. I was very impressed with this whole plan. There were parts of it that I really resonate. The whole Loveland Madeira, and we all agree that it just needs a major upheaval. And I love the ideas that the committee came up with what we can do with Loveland Madeira, and also with Chestnut. We know that has to be developed. That's going to be an economic engine, hopefully, for the rest of what we want to do for Loveland Madeira. And some of the ideas that the committee came up with were really, really good ideas. I love the idea of, because we are so successful down here. This has become a destination for people from far away want to be in Loveland and have heard about it, want to be here, want to visit. How do we make that feeling, that vibe? How do we carry that through the rest of our city? Is a very good point, and something we should be pushing toward. And another way that I think the committee said it was how to connect east versus east to west. And West Loveland is a huge part of that, and how we can bridge that gap. And so I'm very impressed with the plan. I thought it had some really good ideas. It's obviously not on a shelf. Certainly tonight we're already voting on things that we're going to implement with regard to this plan. So kudos for that. But that's just my comments on my feelings on it. Yes, Mr. Hart.
The only thing I would add to that is that not that I want to discount what P&Z has done, and I do support the changes that they will make, and will be voting affirmatively to support what the work that they've done. I just wanted to lay out the conversations that were had and also make sure that we all considered it and had vetted the process and vetted the discussions that were had before the P&Z got with it, got the plan, and I do think that not boxing the city in is not a terrible idea, and I do think that it's important we lay out, as Mr. Kennedy has and the Mayor has, that the current planning, the current zoning laws will stay intact. That has not changed.
All right. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Ping.
Just to follow up, on the comments I made earlier, the language that's in here is not inappropriate. It's not that it's a problem. I wanted to have just the discussion about this specifically so that we could have this opportunity. As the city manager has said, and as city solicitor has said, as the mayor has said, there's a language that is codified. There's language that is there that carries the weight of law, and then there's suggestion. I still think it's a reasonable thing to make note of the fact that, again, I would say that what I read in the survey when I went through and looked through all that and in talking to Councilman Hart, I think it's a fair statement to say that of the people that responded, and 200 is great, but out of 13,000 people, it's not a statistical survey necessarily. So, but of the people that responded, there is definitely a lean towards not wanting to have substantial change in our community, and I think, that would be the reason for including that language. One of the things that I think, probably was alluded to already. The words low density carry with them something for you guys, especially that are attorneys and have been city staff for a very long time, that for the rest of us don't. I mean, when I see the words low density, I just think it's a term. But as you guys were talking about it, it's obvious that part of the problem here is that is a zoning term as well, and so you have to be careful about throwing that language around. So. Certainly, I mean, I don't have any reason to oppose, and I'll be voting for this. But it is something that I think I just wanted to bring up so that we could make it more public. One of the things that we have heard too in the last few months is about being more open about what we're doing. And since we have not had a chance to discuss this in any way prior to this, it seemed like it was worthwhile. So I appreciate all the comments and the time that everyone has spent on it.
All right. Anyone else? Read the resolution.
Resolution adopting the 2022 Comprehensive Master Plan for the City of Loveland, Ohio.
Any comment on the resolution itself? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Resolution 70 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Wright, do you want to talk about those two resolutions that you have in here? Or, I'm sorry, about the...
Yes, Mayor. Thank you. Item E is we have a proposal from Choice One Engineering for Professional Services Agreement, which would allow us to begin pedestrian network plan surveying and preliminary plan development for the Loveland-Madera Road corridor. As you can see in the memorandum, the corridor is about 4,000 feet long, and this was a specific outcome of the comp plan that you just approved. So this, through the comp plan, there was a extensive public engagement planning process. Really, the first step in this is to identify the boundaries of the corridor, conduct some survey work, kind of identify what the right-of-way limits are, and then to begin the preparation of preliminary plans in that regard. And what that will do, there were three segments, really: High Ridge to Miami View to Valley View, and Valley View to West Loveland Avenue. And so, with that, each segment is sort of unique. And so the plan, or this agreement, would allow Choice One to work with the city, work in the context of the comprehensive planning document to identify those right-of-way limits, survey where are our utilities, where are our easements, where are our water lines, what are the existing built conditions, and then start plan development. This would get us to about 50% plans And then at that point, you'll be able to assess the true cost of that. You'll have some preliminary engineering estimates, probably quantities, and all of that. And then, there may be areas through that need to be augmented. Maybe, the plan said 5 foot all the way down, but maybe there's an area where it feels sort of tight. You need to go maybe 7 or 8 feet or something like that. And again, that's why you do these studies. And so in this instance, we have this proposal. The proposal, they're proposing the work for $27,700. The engineering and surveyor work will allow the city to determine what public right-of-way we have, what utilities we have, what utilities we need to move, what right-of-way, if there is right-of-way acquisition needs that we have to entertain. And then will also get us to the point where we can apply to the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments through the STP, CMAQ, and TA funding avenues, and there may be other funding avenues there to compete with that. And that is a very competitive process. So it behooves us to put our best foot forward here and to really drill down and find out how to tackle these. And again, the segments give us a good opportunity to really take these down in achievable chunks, in that 4,000 feet of roadway is very expensive, if you do it all at once. But if you do it in segments, the projects can be, funded through this process. So with that, the policy options are to authorize the city manager to approve this agreement, authorizing expenditure up to $27,700 and allowing work to proceed. You could not approve the proposal. The fiscal impact is $27,700, and the recommendation is to approve the requested legislation to execute the contract, directing the city manager to do so.
Okay. Any questions or comments, Mr. Ori?
I was very happy to see this in the packet for this meeting, because we just approved our comprehensive plan and we're taking action right now. Mr. Wright, I have a question for you. Do you know what the time frame is for Choice One to produce?
So with that, if you look at the, these having reconstructed local street, my prior employer, we really took. I would imagine we'd have the survey work done. I don't know. Survey work can take 60 to 90 days, I think, plus or minus. That's just a ballpark estimate. And I think, to have preliminary plans, you're probably another just very, very preliminary plans, probably another 90 days. But to get to a 50% level, to get to a 50% level with engineering estimates on a project of this magnitude with 3 segments, you're probably looking at about, I'd say, 6 months. I don't think that's unrealistic to have that in that. And we certainly will push as aggressively as we can. They provide us with an update every week on the projects that they work on, and they're very responsive to the city. So
I wouldn't expect it to be much quicker than 6 months anyway. But
right.
My question was really asked for all of us, that as we're talking about it, we can tell people that first of the year we should be able to see some preliminary stuff.
We would hope that we would have some survey and identify the existing built conditions by then, for sure. And even 15 to 25% plans, you'll be able to get a good idea of what kind of the footprint and what the improvements are going to look like. So,
thank you.
Any other comment, Mr. Hart?
This is a really big deal, because this is one of the primary goals of the comprehensive plan, in terms of investing in that level of corridor, making sure that kind of put lipstick on the pig, so to speak, assuming that it would help drive investment in that area if the actual aesthetic of the actual corridor itself, the road itself, with 3-line streets, sidewalks, the whole 9 activity. So the investment in the aesthetic of that by the city being a driver of investment to that area was a big part of our discussion.
Any further comment? Read the yes, Vice Mayor.
Mr. Wright, just in terms of how they'll report this out, will they do it segment by segment, or will it be one final report that'll have all?
I think we would have one final report, and we can certainly drive the deliverables in that to where we can break it out on. I would ask them to break it out on a segment by segment basis, and even further if the estimates, because of the cost escalations that we're seeing now with construction projects, I mean, just generally across the country, we may even carve it out even further into a segment 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, but this gives you the opportunity, et cetera. This gives you the opportunity to do that and really drill down into that and to see, okay, well, this segment's going to be X. So why don't we carve that into 3 chunks instead of 2 or 4 or whatever, or we're able to tackle it, or maybe it's not so bad. And there's some existing infrastructure, utilities and things that we have to relocate, some striping and things like that that are less, that are basically more cost efficient and less construction intensive. And so in that, then you can maybe advance more linear feet along that corridor. This study would help you identify that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Choice One Engineering, professional design services, and surveying services in furtherance of the Loveland Madeira Road Sidewalk and Shared Travel Lane project.
Any comment on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
I didn't hear.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Resolution 71 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
All right, in 13, we have an amended agenda at the table, and also a memo and an ordinance. So we do need a motion to amend the agenda to consider those items. Anyone care to make such a motion?
I'll move to amend the agenda to include zoning recreational uses.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
So I think your discussion earlier regarding the zoning code and a need for a total revamp of that sort of teed this item up. In our world here at City Hall, Chapter 1156 is sort of our Bible. It's our zoning code. It's a table of permitted uses. And that is all the different uses that are in the varying zoning classifications that the city has. And the city changes, things change, amendments were made over time, and we are growing increasingly concerned with where our various recreational uses, of which we have 4, are permitted within the different zoning districts within the city. And we will be taking this to the Planning and Zoning Commission. In a sort of a similarity, Hattie, you addressed some concerns with taking a step back and looking at mobile food trucks. We're coming right back with another item that we would like City Council to do, which is give us some time to review where the varying commercial, non-commercial, active and passive recreations are permitted, and make sure that they truly fit within the zoning for the best of the city from an economic standpoint, from a total harmonious standpoint. So we're just asking for a 6-month hold on the acceptance of any applications. And I know it's a little wordy in the recommendation, but we're asking for a 180-day moratorium on the acceptance of any application or issuance of any zoning permits related to active recreation use, commercial recreation use, or commercial community non-commercial recreation uses within all zoning districts for a 6-month period of time effective with today's date.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
And that ordinance would be requested to be passed as an emergency.
All right, we'll go ahead and read the ordinance.
Ordinance establishing a 180-day moratorium on the acceptance of all applications and issuance of any permits for any type of active recreation use, commercial recreation use, or community non-commercial recreation use within any zoning district established within the city and declaring an emergency.
Any comment, questions on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Ordinance 72 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight I have a request to establish a public hearing for City Council to consider an initiated special planning district application pursuant to Chapter 1151, Section 1151.02B1 of the Planning and Zoning Code. So this is the Oak Street development project that we have referred to the project in-house as, and basically we're looking to set a public hearing on Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022, to consider this application. So if you recall, there was a memorandum provided as an attachment to the memorandum this evening that documented the zoning commission's final action, the applications attached, and also called for a delay to allow the applicant to get their house in order with regard to filing plans that meet the requirements of Section 1151.04 and 1151.05. And so we've developed a checklist, after many iterations going back and forth with the developer. They have addressed those. And so there is sufficient plan information, as you'll see in the filings, that provide council with the opportunity to consider the development properly in the course of a public hearing. I think this stage is really critical. It allows staff to engage with the developer, make sure they have the information needed. And as we know, this project's seen multiple iterations. We're now down from, by a factor of 10, the number of units that went through, a year and a half ago to now. So we're at 6 units that they've proposed. About a significant portion of the site is open space. The development standards are cited in the memorandum and in the application. The application is very clear in what they're proposing. And so the request here would be to establish a public hearing date for August 23rd, August 23rd, 2022 at or about 7 o'clock p.m. pursuant to Section 1151.02B1 of the Special Planning District Regulations, to consider the adoption of a resolution adopting a concept plan, development guidelines, and written findings of fact per Section 1151.03 relative to the SPD application filed by Hunt & Whitaker, LLC, for the establishment of this SPD that facilitates the development of 6 single-family detached units on approximately 1.145 acres of property at 102 Oak Street. And I would just add again, as I mentioned previously, upon the public hearing, and if the development then proceeds, it then goes through the zoning map, through additional process, and it will also have the Historical Preservation and Planning Commission hearing in addition to that. So there's multiple layers of review left for that project. So that concludes my report on that.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Yes, Mr. Ping?
After the hearing, you said there's additional review processes. Then this comes back to us eventually.
They initiate. There's procedure in there where they have to initiate a map amendment, and then it comes back to planning, zoning, back to city council, and then that will go through. Then it goes back for site plan and plat review to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then concurrently, I would assume concurrently, we would run the SPD or the HPPC process to the SPD. As it finishes itself through that. So,
I just would like to add one process. We have recently put another layer for the historic preservation. Councilmember Bateman knows about this. We have used Montgomery as a big model for how to do the historic preservation correctly, and our historic preservation design guidelines. At this point, the committee has largely looked at signage and siting, and reaching out to Montgomery about constantly getting guidance. They highly recommended that I have a historic preservation architect on retainer. I now have Beth Sullenberg. That's all she does. She does it for Montgomery. So whenever there's a case such as this, will likely be Beth's first visit. Beth will literally sit up here very similar to the way Mr. Braun sits up here, and she'll be a guiding force on the aesthetics and the deep dive into the materials, the Historic Preservation Commission. So I just want you to know that we take that pretty seriously, and that fits right into how these 6 units would be reviewed. So I just think it's important to note. I might have put it in a weekly again.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Yes, Vice Mayor.
I'll make the motion to set a public hearing for Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022 at about 7 p.m. pursuant to Section 151.02b1 of the Special Planning District Regs to consider adoption of a resolution adopting a concept plan, development guidelines, and written finding of fact per Section 1151.03 relative to a special planning district application filed by Hunt and Whitaker for the establishment of an SPD, and that will facilitate the development of 6 single-family detached residential dwelling units situated on 1.14 acres of property at 102 Oak Street.
Can you read that one more time?
Second.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right. Mr. Kennedy, Council Manic.
So I sort of let the council manic go stale for a little while, so we're bringing it back, getting all of our dates in line. So tonight we were scheduled for the first update on city council goals and a quarterly redevelopment disposition of city and CIC owned property. Under city and CIC property, just from a notable standpoint, as far as 3 notable items going on with city property. Under the guidance of Corey, we are really moving forward with the Chestnut Street remediation project. Corey will probably be giving you updates in the future on that. Effective August 1st, the mobile station will be vacant and thus begins the process of removal of the buildings. So Corey recently secured some money from Claremont County for the demolition, and then what will be a very long process for the remediation of the tanks. So that all kicks in gear August 1st, and everything's in line. Joe and Corey were going over some papers. The third item is we'll be moving forward relatively soon with the city-owned property on East Kemper, just above the Walgreens. The survey has been completed. It's being reviewed by the Hamilton County Engineer's Office, and we will begin the annexation property process of bringing that unusable, undevelopable property into the city limits, which will then facilitate the second community entertainment district that the city will have in that area, bounded largely, the area I'm talking about, between Cottonwood down to including the Starbucks area. So those are just some notable items under city-owned properties that we're dealing with. Just a real quick, this is our first update. The next update will be September 27th on the comprehensive plan. I think, and Mayor Bailey and I were talking about, we need to continue promoting the city's efforts to being a true leader in the long-term plan of an alternative bridge location. And we ran with that. We met with multiple port authorities and TIDs, and just one of those things you're just going to constantly chip away at. It's a lot like what we're doing on Riverside Drive with the Corps of Engineers to fix that road and going down this path, but there's things that are constantly chipping away at it. So Corey's leading that. He's doing a good job with that. We've making. I always like to say that the traffic in the city of Loveland, there's never been one golden nugget that was going to fix it. If it was, Tom Carroll would have done it years ago. It's always been incremental changes, from the left turn arrow at 5 points to the overflow parking area that we're adding at the Nature Preserve, to upcoming improvement we're going to make at the intersection by the Dairy Whip at West Loveland and Love Madeira with a right turn arrow that knows when you should be able to turn right, not just you can't turn right on red. All of these incremental changes that we've made, we're in place, and so we've made some additional changes with that. Pursue the goal of a pedestrian bike lane connectivity. I love Miamiville. Those residents are very happy. They're accepting the fact that it'll be a multi-phase, but we're ready to go, perfect in time, just as we plan. As we're entering the budget, we'll have our phases. We'll likely be working from St. Columban up. You work where your drainage terminates and work your way up. So we're hoping that can be in 3 phases. That'll typically take 3 subdivisions, one at a time. Remediation at Chestnut, we already talked about that. 2 items more. Strengthen and enhance public relations functions. That newsletter that Krista put out was as big of a home run as we can have. She is just stupendous, and we're really pleased with that. That speaks for itself. I think you'll always be, that's sort of the fun update that you'll always get, and Krista does a wonderful job. And then And lastly, with the Fire Station 63, we went from an RFQ. That's where a bunch of firms tell us why we should hire them. We selected 3. That's when they do an RFP, which is how much it'll cost. So we're down to those 3 firms. They'll be submitting their final proposal for the design, the full connection that we'll have from all the way through construction supervision. We have 3 excellent firms that are the 3 finalists to begin that process for the new Station 63. So that's just sort of the highlights of the updates. And I believe I just gave you sort of a recommendation. I really faulted a little bit on the so we'll have city council goals will be back on September 27th, and quarterly redevelopment will be back on October 11th. So we'll just keep chunking away on those items. So those are sort of the highlights from the council meeting.
All right. Any comments or questions on that? Anybody have any comments on the various committee minutes and reports that are in the packet? All right. As far as upcoming city events, String Theory will be playing in Nisbet Park this Sunday from 6 to 8 as part of our city's Concert in the Park series. Applications for Loveland U will be accepted until the end of the month. Till the end of this month. Almost over.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see. Little Miami River Chamber Alliance is hosting a health and wellness expo in Nisbet Park on this Saturday from 10 to 2. Primary elections will be held on Tuesday, August 2nd. Prince of Peace Lutheran Church is hosting a community block party on August 3rd. As Tori said, the second annual Ben Morrison Memorial Golf Outing will be held on August 7th at Hickory Woods Golf Course. And vendors of Jackson Street Market will host a sale on the trail on August 13th. So all things happening before our next meeting. Anybody have anything else as far as council reports? All right, and we need a motion to go into executive session.
I'll move for executive session under Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G2. Consider the purchase of property and Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G3 to conference with counsel related to imminent litigation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
It is 9:18. We're returned from executive session. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mayor Phelps? Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Trying to do that. Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey? Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Yes.
Blair? Motion carries 6-0.